Today on the show, we take an up-close and personal look at what's been going on at the border with regard to separated families, and we discuss why two wrongs still do not make a right.
Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Let's go!
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born!
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
You know, there's this weird phenomena that seems to be the product of the digital age. You and I talk about it all the time. But I think the reason it bears repeating is because it's important and we have to remember it. We have to keep remembering it, otherwise we are done for. And this weird product of the digital age is the fact that people tend to confuse winning with being snarky, clever, feeling like they've got one over on somebody else. Now, if you have a disagreement with somebody, if you fundamentally disagree with someone about something that is very important to both of you, screaming at them, shouting them down, trying to make them feel small and stupid and like their point of view is invalid, that doesn't work in the real world. I don't know if maybe you spent some time on the debate team in high school or college where you're trying to score points and there's going to be an adjudicator that tells you who won afterwards, but guess what? That doesn't work in the real world. That doesn't lead to meaningful change. And people are so obsessed with this idea of winning, of being snarky, of being snotty, of making somebody else look small or bad, especially online. It's that weird dopamine hit that we've been conditioned to treasure so much in the year 2018. That weird hit that comes from a bunch of people that already agree with you going, you're so right, you're so right. This, as they share it, hashtag this, or left without comment, or I'm just going to leave this here and let it marinate. You see it all over the place. And it was a sort of like thing that pervaded social media, I suppose, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the above. And now it's seeping into our daily lives. And like I said, people confuse winning with getting a bunch of people that already agree with them to be like, that was clever. If you want to win, you want change, you want meaningful change, and you want someone to come around to your way of thinking so we can all get there together. Case in point, what's going on at the border with children? It's interesting to see a humanitarian crisis bring out the absolute worst in humans. Now, I'm not necessarily sure where you come down on all of this. I don't know if you're one of those people that's like, oh, that picture that was tweeted out a little while back. that happened under the Obama administration. Yeah, they didn't realize that. Oops. Tweeted too soon. Yeah. Big deal. It happened under a couple of different administrations. Doesn't make it okay, doesn't make it right. Hey, these kids are the children of MS-13 gang members. If they came to America, they'd probably be taken from their parents and put into child protective services. Okay, that is also right. But it doesn't change the fact that there are some kids in some very difficult situations. And there are some kids being kept in conditions that a lot of people find to be subhuman. Now, people are arguing about this. And like I said, it's very strange to see people's compassion toward kids morphing into something so unbelievably ugly. Case in point, I think the best example I've seen of this would be Peter Fonda. Peter Fonda tweeted, "We should rip Baron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles and see if his mother will stand up against the giant," can't say that on the radio, "she is married to." Now, first and foremost, hopefully enough people that are not fans of Donald Trump called him on this and said, hey, that's not okay. Suggesting caging someone's child with pedophiles never will be okay. You seem to have missed that one. But isn't it incredible how quickly we devolve in these situations? What are we going to do for the kids? How are we going to help these pure, innocent children? They have no choice in the matter. We owe it to them. We owe it to God. We owe it to humanity to do the right thing by these kids. Except for not that kid, not that pure, innocent kid. He should be ripped from his mother's arms and put in a cage with a pedophile. Oh, no, multiple pedophiles. And it's disgusting, obviously. But it's that weird thing. Peter Henry Fonda, he's been a star forever. He's got all the adulation, all the attention, everything that he needed to pat his ego on its back, to make him feel okay about his place in the world. His id has been well looked after for a very long time, and still that wasn't enough. He had to lose sight of humanity and say something absolutely horrible about a child because he wanted to be lauded on the internet by a bunch of people that already agree with him. And what does this do to help any child? Answer: absolutely nothing. We cannot confuse being snarky and clever with a win, because in no way, shape, or form is it.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So yeah, we've said it before. We will say it again. We'll continue to talk about it because it bears repeating, because it's something that we cannot lose sight of. And it appears like we are. And it's a slippery slope. It's a devolution of humanity. And we must fight against it at every turn. This idea that when you make somebody else feel small, you're winning. This idea that if you have a fundamental disagreement with somebody else, and it's very prevalent in the digital age, if you can go, ha ha ha, you're wrong because of this. What are you going to achieve? What are you going to do? A bunch of people, a room full of people, an echo chamber full of people that already agree with your point of view, that are already on your side, that need no convincing. The choir that you don't need to preach to is going to go, oh, you're so right. You're so clever. You're so clever, and you're so right, and you're so awesome. You see it all the time. And it's this way of thinking that started online, and it's beginning to pervade our analog life. This college professor shuts down the argument against immigration in 2 seconds. This millennial shuts down the argument against gun control in 2 seconds. This former Marine talks about why gun control is essential and destroys the NRA in 2 minutes. Like, you see all that. And you know what? No one's being destroyed. No argument is being decimated. No progress is being made. It's just a bunch of people going, you're so right. I know I'm right. Let's talk to each other about how we're right. Shall we engage the other person? Nah, we told them what's what. Now it's up to them to learn while we talk about how right we are. Well, guess what? They're not over there talking about how right you are. They're not over there talking about how you were right and they were wrong and they never saw it your way. No. They're over there with their friends going, look at these idiots. Look at what they're trying to prove. Let's go Google some stuff so we can figure out some arguments against this and make our own pointless 2-minute video and shut them down. And in that time, while all this is happening, the chasm between people gets wider. The gap in understanding gets wider. Like I said, it's something you and I have talked about a lot on this show, and it bears repeating because it's so important. So important that we recognize that we are being driven apart. We are confusing winning with snarkiness and one-upmanship. And it's causing a very real, very serious divide. So I beg of you, if you disagree with someone, do me a favor. For a moment, try and understand where they're coming from. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to do anything other than respect their point of view. You don't even have to respect their point of view. But if you could just make the effort to try and figure out how they got that way, how they came to that conclusion that is so different than yours, well then, you'll be a lot better off. And you will have meaningfully dialogued with someone. And anger, division, these are the enemies of getting things done. You want to get something done? You want to resolve something? You want to do something meaningful, say for, it's a hot topic of the day, a bunch of kids that are being kept in conditions many people say are absolutely deplorable at the border. You want to do something meaningful for those kids? That's not going to come from telling somebody else that they're wrong and you're right. It's just not. And you know what? We're losing sight of that, which is why we bring this up over and over again. If you talk to someone, if you try and understand their point of view, if you try and understand their perspective, you'll understand how they got there. You will have gotten somewhere with them. You will have done something that no prejudice stands up to. You will have had contact. It's awfully hard to stay mad at someone when you're not. It's awfully easy to stay mad at someone when you're in your separate corners. When you're hanging out together a little bit, when you're in each other's space, when you're seeing each other for what you really are, what we mostly are, what mostly every single one of us in America is, a decent human being that just kind of sort of wants to make their way in the world, doesn't mean to cause anybody any harm, just trying to live their life, have a little dignity. If we recognize that in each other, that is what is going to get us closer to doing something meaningful for these kids. The Peter Henry Fondas of this world saying that we should rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles, that does nothing. That strengthens a divide. That gives the other side ammunition. Did you see what he said? He wants to throw a kid to a cage full of pedophiles. Well, we seriously can't take any of what everybody that is on his side of this argument has to say. They're all dismissible and they're all evil because that's an evil thing to say. And you know what? You can kind of sort of understand that, can't you? So I guess I'm doing what I'm always doing on this show. I'm asking you to stop and think about what people that disagree with you want, who they are, because they're just like you, just people. We all want the same things in America. We all want a roof over our heads. We all want to have work. We would love it if that work was meaningful. We want to be able to make a living. If we have kids, we want to be able to provide for them. And not only do we want to be able to provide for them, we want to feel like our kids have a shot. We want to feel like our kids have a shot at making their way in this world, at having a life. And you know what? Once you recognize that people that fundamentally disagree with you want the same things out of life, you start to realize that they don't necessarily disagree with you. They've just got a different idea about the best way to get there. And if you talk, and if you come together, and if you share ideas, there is a possibility that maybe, just maybe, you'll learn something from one another. And you, me, all of us can get there quicker.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So you and I have been talking a little bit about what's been going on with regard to keeping families together at the border today. And it's been a hot button issue over the last couple of days, and it's something that I've been content to let other people scream and yell and rant and rave about. In these situations, I like to be the cooler head that prevails. I like to be the person that takes in information. I like to be the person that brings you the closest approximation of the truth in terms of what's going on. And well, this is a deal as it stands today. Donald Trump has gone on the record for weeks on end saying, you know what, I'd rather keep families together. In immigration detention, when we catch people trying to cross the border illegally, we would rather keep families together. He said that there was no choice but to separate them at the U.S.-Mexico border so parents could be prosecuted for illegal entry. Now there's an executive order in place. A lot of people are saying this is him relenting. A lot of people are saying this is him reversing what he was saying. A lot of people saying he caved, that we won. on family separation. This is the deal with the executive order. It tells the administration to do the thing that they said they couldn't do: detain children along with their parents in immigration detention while the parents are prosecuted. So, keep the family together while the parents are punished. By the way, I mean, I understand that a lot of people will tell you they're just trying to find a better life for their children. But, did you catch this? A Border Patrol agent who said when you see a 12-year-old girl with a Plan B pill, you know that her parents are putting her on birth control because they know getting violated is part of this journey. It's a terrible way to live. It's this guy, Chris Cabrera, a Border Patrol agent, spokesperson for the National Border Patrol Council. He was on CNN to discuss the Trump administration enforcing America's border laws. Cabrera said, "We've had this situation going on for years now. I don't think you can necessarily blame it on one administration or another." And you know what? This is just such a fallacy of the weird, unflinching borderline religious belief that people have in their respective parties at the moment. If it's good, it must have been us. If it's bad, it must have been them. We never did anything wrong. Now, if you're like me, and if you've listened to this show for any length of time, there's a very good chance that you find Democrats and Republicans to not really be that freaking different. To me, it's Coke and Pepsi. It's brown sugary water that's going to give you cavities that taste relatively similar, but will tell you the other one is crap. That's how I tend to feel about American party politics, especially in the year 2018. But this Border Patrol agent said this situation has been going on for years now. You can't necessarily blame it on one administration or another. It started under one. It continues under another. Obama was the deporter in chief. It hasn't been fixed, and it needs to be fixed, he said. He said, right now we have this beacon of, we'll leave the light on for you. If you've seen some of the stuff we've seen, you'd understand how important it is to have a tough stance to divert people from coming here. When you see a 12-year-old girl with a Plan B pill, her parents put her on birth control because they know getting violated is part of this journey, and it's a terrible way to live. When you see a 4-year-old girl traveling alone with just her parents' phone numbers written across her shirt. When you see a 9-year-old boy have heat stroke in front of us and die with no family around. That's because we're allowing people to take advantage of this system. If we want the law to change, then it's on Congress. But in the meantime, they're going to continue to enforce the law. So there you go. Americans are outraged over what is happening. And people want to know that guys like this dude, Cabrera, are treating the children humanely. He said, most of our agents are parents. I've seen guys, and I've done it myself. You give your last bottle of water to a kid. You'll take a toy out of your car and give it to one of these kids because you know what the situation is that they're in. Agents are very sympathetic. We're human. We're fathers. We have families. We do a lot for communities here, whether or not the camera is involved. Our agents are very involved, and nobody saves more lives along the border than the U.S. Border Patrol. Now, look, you could say that's a neat little bit of spin, but it's good. It's good to get into the human element of people that do this for a living. It's good to know the reality of the situation some of these kids are put in by their parents that are crossing the border illegally. And, you know, it's interesting. This has been a bipartisan issue in the past, the idea of border control. Border control is important for a lot of reasons. Most people that talk about border control will talk about how it's important to Americans. Most people will talk about how it puts unfair burdens on American taxpayers to have people in this country illegally. That's been an issue that the left and the right have agreed upon for many, many years. So it's interesting to see a Border Patrol agent say, hey, you know what? Because we've been lax with our borders, because our borders have been porous, because there's this idea that people can get through. There's families that want to do something better for their child, give them a better way of life here in America. that are putting them in positions where they're going to starve to death, be separated from them forever, die of heat stroke, be raped, be violated. So it's an interesting take. And one that you might feel is a bit of spin, but it's always good to get a description from the horse's mouth about what's actually going on. The guy's there on the front lines, and I, for one, was very interested in hearing what he had to say about the day-to-day reality of working on the border. It's not in any way, shape, or form related to kids being kept alone in detention centers, but it's an interesting thing to consider. So, as it stands today, Trump's executive order will basically allow a family's immigration case to be heard. Parents and children will be kept together while the parents are prosecuted. The Trump administration is hoping this will result in the swift deportation of these folks. If not, they're willing to detain the family as long as it takes, indefinitely. The executive order is titled Affording Congress an Opportunity to Address the Family Separation. That's what it's titled. And Donald Trump, what Donald Trump is going to need is he's going to need swift action. Congress is going to have to get their asses in gear if they're going to validate the decision to keep families detained indefinitely. So, there we have it. Families can now be detained indefinitely, but in theory, they will be together. In other border-related controversy news, I don't know if you caught it or not, but Donald Trump Jr. has bailed on the George P. Bush fundraiser because of the Bush family's opposition to the president's treatment of illegals. I don't know if you caught it. Jeb Bush tweeted that children shouldn't be used as a negotiating tool, and that President Trump should end his heartless policy of family separation. Apparently, folks that are close to Don Jr. said that Jeb Bush's tweet was the final straw in what he sees as repeated attacks from the Bush family. Don Jr. was all sorts of mad. He was furious after Jeb Bush said back in March that despite losing the 2016 election, at least he goes home to children who, quote, still love me, which is a low blow. Don Jr. perceived it as a swipe at Trump, which it absolutely was. And then Don Jr. reportedly reached out to George P., who was all sorts of apologetic. Then earlier this month, Jeb said on CNBC that he can't imagine having to attack his rivals in the way that President Trump does to make himself look strong. Pot, kettle, black. At least I go home to a kid that still loves me. Don Jr. called George P. again, and George P. apologized profusely, telling him that he had already talked to his father and that it wouldn't happen again. After that, Don Jr. said he could no longer help George P. if his dad continued to attack the president. So it's been a divisive issue. It hasn't just been a left and a right sort of thing. It's been something that's gotten right down the center of the Republican Party. And it's sort of, interestingly enough, reignited the Never Trump faction within the right. But again, it comes down to the fact that these people are going to argue. There's going to be grown-ass men, politicians, public servants whose main goal should be, serving the public, who are going to put entirely too much effort into snarky one-upmanship on Twitter, like sixth graders, when they should be, like I said, like a public servant serving the public. And it then falls to us. If our quote-unquote leaders, if our so-called leaders, if our elected officials who never forget make their living off of your hard-earned tax dollar, if they can't get it together, if they can't be civil to one another, if they can't put their differences aside, if they put snarky one-upmanship in front of actually accomplishing something meaningful, then it will always fall to us. It will always fall to us to lead the discourse in America. We are too often at the effect. We are too often being cajoled into taking sides by the people that have real benefit in us taking sides. People seek us to divide. People seek to divide us because it makes us easier to conquer. If they can convince you that the other side is wrong all the time and evil and wants nothing good for America, then it's a lot easier to get you to vote straight ticket. It's a lot easier to get you to do it blindly and unfailingly. Questions are the enemy of folks like this in these situations. Sensible, common sense questions. Questioning leadership as they should be questioned when you pay their freaking salary is a real time consuming bummer for those in power. And Well, one thing that people with power want is to make sure that they still have it and you don't get some. And questions are power. Questions about humanity are power. So it's good. It's good that in some ways this has divided the right. But when you get into arguments, Peter Fonda style, saying, hey, we should rip Barron Trump from the arms of his mother and throw him into a cage with pedophiles. Or when a Bush family member tweets at a Trump family member, at least I go home to children that love me. Never forget. These people aren't serving anything or anyone other than themselves, other than their own egos. So there you go. It falls to us. I know I sound like a broken record. I know you and I talk about this over and over again. I know you're probably getting sick of me saying it falls to us. It falls to us to lead the discourse in the country. It falls to us to figure out how we're going to live our lives. It falls to us to shape the world around us. I know I say it a lot, but there's a reason I say it a lot. Because it's true. And because in 2018, every single day of this year, it seems like we as Americans have forgotten that a little bit more. Every day, it seems like we are living at the effect. Every day, it seems like we are being cajoled by politicians into taking sides, being divided from our fellow human being, our fellow American, who probably wants exactly the same thing as us, but just has a different idea about how to get there. Every day, we are being manipulated into leaving our humanity behind and taking sides in a way that serves absolutely no one and nothing other than these politicians who are supposed to be serving us. So yeah, I do bring it up over and over again because it is very, very important. And of course it goes without saying, stuff like this, stuff like what Corey Lewandowski did on Fox News the other day really doesn't help.
I read today about a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome who was taken from her mother and put in a cage. I read about did you say want to a 10-year-old with Down syndrome
what
being
I
taken
said
from
is
her
you
mother?
Can pick anything you want, but the bottom line is very clear.
You?
When you cross the border illegally, you have given up the rights of this country.
Being taken from their
we
mothers.
are a country with borders. We are a country of laws.
Stolen from their mothers and put into cages.
Cross this country illegally, your parents understand this. They understand something very
when you both talk. So
when you cross the border illegally, when you commit a crime, you are taken away from your family.
She has Down syndrome and she was taken from her mother.
Right.
This policy is abhorrent.
So, yeah, it's an interesting one for the folks over the Fox News that were trumpeting about the fact that if a child, a 10-year-old with Down syndrome, is taken from their family, it's wah-wah because, well, it's a sad trombone sound because the parents broke the law. Now Donald Trump has said families can stay together because that's a humane thing to do. I wonder if Fox News are going to issue a retraction of the wah-wah. See, this is our media. These are our leaders. This is why we have to be better.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio. 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
So, if you've listened to the show for any length of time, we don't tend to trouble ourselves with scandalous tabloid journalism. We're not exactly a classy news outlet, but, we like to not waste our time and yours with that kind of thing. So I'm almost reticent to bring this up, but the other thing that we do take very seriously around here is the exposure of hypocrisy whenever we can. And, well, it's always interesting when somebody that holds themselves up to be a paragon of virtue, someone who holds himself up as, well, here's me deciding where the line of morality is, and everybody else must kowtow to that. It's interesting when someone like that is proven to be slightly less than what they purport to be. Case in point, did you hear which member of the Fox News family is reportedly having an affair with a member of the cast of Modern Family? Yeah, it's an interesting one. We'll get into it in just a little bit. Right now, though, speaking of people stepping out on their significant others, let's check out Nori Davis on Hip Hop Guys Who Steal Your Girl.
Like, I'm conscious on hip-hop, like I love hip-hop, but we all know sometimes it's misogynistic, and I think it's because of the male ego. Like, I don't like when rappers like, yo, I stole your girl. No, you didn't. I was whack and she went to you. Stop acting like she didn't walk over there. She has legs. It takes away a woman's choice. Like, if you stole my girl, that's kidnapping. That's a whole other song. That's a whole other track. I gotta listen to the song for the ransom. Got your girl in the club, 50 grand. Jalissa, are you out there? Please hit me back on the gram. I don't know where you went. I don't know which Migos took her.
So, yeah, people stepping out on their significant others, there's always a certain amount of comedic value in that. And while I don't necessarily believe this is all that comedic, I do think it's interesting to point out hypocrisy wherever we find it. Now, if someone ever digs into my past and finds something that is, well, less than morally upright, I would say, what took you so long? I mean, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take drugs, I don't believe in casual sex, I don't do a lot of things that a lot of people consider to be a lot of fun. I've been this old school hardcore punk rock thing called straight edge in the past, but I certainly haven't necessarily lived up to, I certainly necessarily haven't always acted in a manner that I should. I'm a human being. And I don't claim to be anything more than a human being. There's stuff I used to say and do on various shows of mine that, well, I look back on them and I go, it wasn't necessarily the best, most evolved version of myself that was making a living being the night guy on a rock station, talking mostly about boobs and fart jokes. Although fart jokes are always funny and boobs are great. But if you listen to that, it might seem a little inconsistent with what you're listening to now. Here's the thing. I own all that. That's part of life's rich tapestry and part of who I was, and I guess maybe in some ways part of who I still am. It's a journey. But we do tend to point out hypocrisy on this show. And I never hold myself up as a paragon of virtue. I never hold myself up as someone who decides what's right and what's wrong, and tells you that if you think differently than me, well, then you're going to hell, where you will burn for all eternity. The way certain other news personalities do. Now, look, I get it. There's big money in division. There's big money in ranting and raving and giving people simple answers. A simple narrative for a simple people pays significantly better than what I do does. I look for the truth. I treat people with respect. I don't believe in I'm right and you're wrong. I don't believe everything's black and white. I believe that there's a lot of gray in this world, and in that gray is often where you're going to get a lot closer to the truth. So, to me, it's cheap. It's pandering to say, I'm right and everybody that disagrees with me is going to hell because I'm right. And for that reason, I guess I sort of relish in the idea of hypocrisy being exposed. And I'm reticent to deal in this sort of tabloid journalism, especially at this alleged and unproven stage in the game. But here's the dealio. This past Monday just gone by, the head writer of the NBC comedy Superstore was dumping on Fox News. And he was dumping on Fox News commentator Tucker Carlson because Tucker was complaining that the elites, by the way, you make as much money as any of those Fox News hosts Fox News hosts make. You're officially a member of the elite. When you're really good at something, you're considered to be elite. If you're the best pitcher in the major leagues, if you're the best pitcher in the National League, you're considered to be an elite pitcher. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with being elite. I don't think there's anything wrong with going, hey, I'm so good at what I do. I'm so effective at communicating with my audience that I'm an elite. But the idea that any of the Fox News hosts could say that they're not an elite, check your bank account and get back to me. And I'm not saying you don't deserve every last penny. I'm not saying that's what the free market dictates. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have all that. But let's chill on playing the underdog card here. What the mainstream money-grubbing media doesn't want you to know is that what kind of car did you show up to work in today? Oh, you were driven. All right. Anyways, the Superstore guy suggested that Tucker seemed a little nervous talking about family values, and with good reason, possibly because he had, quote, cheated on his wife with a Modern Family actress. Yeah, now bear in mind, this is unproven stuff at this stage in the game, and if it turns out that he has not done this, well, hey, he hasn't done this, and good for him. He shouldn't have. I can't say if it's true or not, but some people have suggested that the Modern Family cast member that Tucker Carlson was cheating on his wife with was Julie Bowen, because she and Tucker went to school together, and Julie recently filed for divorce. Julie, in case you did not know, plays Claire Dunphy, the blonde with 3 kids, and the goofy husband named Phil. Oh, man. And you know what I realized a little while ago when I watched it? She was also in Happy Gilmore. She was the love interest in Happy Gilmore. You know, the one where Adam Sandler taught her that friends can listen to Endless Love in the dark. The one where she paraded around in her lingerie and an awful lot of the dream sequences. Yeah, that's the one. So that's the question. Is Tucker Carlson from Fox News having an affair with Julie Bowen from Modern Family? His reticence to talk about family values on the air in the way that he usually does would suggest that that is a distinct possibility. We shall wait and see. Like I said, I don't relish this sort of thing, but if there's hypocrisy, well, we're going to point it out around here.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The Dumbing Up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So if you are any kind of a Star Wars fan, you might be one of the people joining the chorus of folks saying, oh man, should have left it up to George Lucas, should have left it up to the master. The latest Star Wars movie, Solo, the Han Solo movie, the Han Solo standalone, that if you're like me, you were so unbelievably excited for when you heard that it was coming out, did not exactly set the box office on fire. And with that, a lot of people are saying that you should give George Lucas back creative control over Star Wars. I don't think he really wants it. He said that he isn't a big fan of what's happened to Star Wars, but he hasn't said, I would like to do it. But here's the thing. Did you hear what George Lucas's idea for Star Wars was? Like, if he made these movies, if he made more Star Wars movies, what they would involve? He openly said people probably would have hated it, but then they would have gotten the full story. What exactly was his idea? It's an interesting one. We'll get into it in just a little bit after we check out Craig Schumacher in Craig Schumacher talking about the things that our mom told us. Our parents told us some messed up stuff.
I go home next week and visit my mom because I need new material. Moms are great. They're a wealth of material because they all say the same things. All moms said, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. They wonder why we had nightmares growing up. I was under the covers with a flashlight and a can of Raid. Get out of here, little bed. You're not going to get me. This is a good one. Don't get smart with me, mister. What do you want me to be, an idiot? No, duh. Remember, duh? We should use that as adults, duh. I'd love to see somebody on Jeopardy. Yeah, Alex, no, duh. How would you like a beating? What are my options? I'm going to knock you in the middle of next week. Make it Thursday. I got a test on Wednesday. This hurts me more than it hurts you. Oh, yeah, give me the belt.
Yeah, you know, my parents never said it to me, and for that I'm truly grateful. But I used to hear, and you still do. I think, I saw it in the grocery store the other day. The kids crying, stop crying. Stop crying. You got to stop crying. This is embarrassing. We're in a public place. Really what they're trying to say is you're embarrassing me. You're being a kid and that embarrasses me. But that whole stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Oh, horrendous, horrible, awful, terrible stuff. If I ever have a child, I will never say that to them. And if you have a kid, I really hope that you won't say that to them. It's not my place to parent or anything like that, but I see it happen in public and I go, that can't be a good thing. You know what else can't be a good thing? George Lucas getting back creative control of Star Wars. And you'll understand why when we discuss exactly what George Lucas's plans for Star Wars would have been if he was still the guy making the movies. Even he says people would have hated them. What exactly was it? We'll get into it after we check out the events of today in the news. Happy birthday to Lionel Richie. Lionel Richie celebrates his 69th birthday this week. Lionel Richie is now 69 years old. I think at his age, the only thing he spends all night long doing is attempting to pee. Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian is reportedly desperate to be taken seriously in political and business worlds. Well, then by all means, continue posting nude selfies. But you know what? Why not? Why not? Look, we talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday. People are starting to look at Kim Kardashian as a viable political option. This is how far we've fallen. This is how close to idiocracy we actually are. And it's because we are desperate and we don't feel safe and we don't feel secure. Like I said yesterday, when my Mets are doing great, I don't look around for other options for starting pitching. I don't start going through our AA and single A and AAA rosters going, who could we bring up that could help save our season before they have to sell the team? I don't do that when we're doing well. When we're doing well, everything is hunky freaking dory, and I don't mind. It's when things go badly that you start looking around for the Hail Mary long shots in these situations. People feel uneasy in 2018, and that's why people are going, maybe Oprah Winfrey. Maybe Kim Kardashian. Star-Lord. Chris Pratt gave a nifty little inspirational speech at the MTV Awards the other day. And because he was vaguely inspirational on stage and gave some decent life advice, now everyone's be like, please, you're the person we need. Run for office. So weird. But yeah, Kim Kardashian reportedly desperate to be taken seriously in the political and business worlds. And you know what? We are desperate enough to where that might just happen. Did you hear what celebrity couple is breaking up, getting divorced? Man, on the one hand, it's sort of surprising because they've been together for so long and they've been through so much together, especially recently. On the other hand, it's a miracle that this didn't happen sooner. Bill and Camille Cosby are allegedly going to be getting divorced. Bill and Camille Cosby are getting divorced. Why? Well, in a paradoxical turn of events, turns out that he's been causing her sleepless nights. Yeah, it's usually different with Bill Cosby and females. Anyways. Did you see this? After he finished making a speech at a small business event, President Trump hugged the American flag. He hugged the American flag as he walked off stage. I believe the flag immediately hired attorney Michael Avenatti. Ann Coulter recently claimed that the crying children being detained at the border are paid actors. Although, I mean, in Ann Coulter's defense, she's a terrible person. Ann Coulter is a woman that is incredible at taking an incendiary phrase. Ann Coulter is a woman that courts controversy when she has a book to shill. Ann Coulter is a person that courts controversy when she's got a speaking tour. Ann Coulter is a person that knows that if she says something that gets under people's skins and outrages them, then more people are going to show up. Her book will sell better because people go, what the hell is she talking about? It raises her public profile enough to where she can cash in, make big dollars. Classic Ann Coulter quote. Ann Coulter quote. Say that? No. Well, I didn't say it one time through successfully, let alone 10 times fast. But the classic Ann Coulter quote that we always bring up on this show is that time where she said, it's that time where she said that Jesus said, rape the earth. Do you remember this? She was addressing environmentalists saying, you're killing the earth. And she was like, Jesus said, rape the earth, take it, do whatever the hell you want to do with it. And that was so carefully constructed because you knew she had a speaking appearance or something like that. You knew she had something to sell. So she went, okay. All right, how can I really get under people's skins? Well, people are angry about the environment. That works. That's really good. Let's see. What else bends people out of shape? Oh, anytime you bring religion into it, people get mad as hell. Rape. That's a word that just makes people shudder. So if I said, Jesus said rape the earth, man, I'm going to make big money. And she has been. And it works for her every single time. Jesus said, rape the earth. These crying children being detained at the border are paid actors. These are incendiary comments that translate into dollars for her. And you always have folks like that. There's always been people willing to part fools from their money using these sorts of tactics. But the problem is the world is catching on to the fact that it works so well for Ann Coulter that everybody's adopting the same stance. I'm going to say something freaking nuts on social media, and it's going to raise my profile to the point where somehow I will get acclaim, I will get likes, I will get shares, I will get retweets, I will get the dopamine hits that comes from that sort of thing happening online, and maybe I'll start making big money for being an outrageous big mouth the way Ann Coulter is. It's dangerous way of thinking. Apple CEO Tim Cook called the separation of families at the border inhumane. Oh, really? Well, in that case, they have something in common with the workers making iPhones in China. President Trump has ordered the military to develop... Oh, we talked about this yesterday. Space Force. Yeah. President Trump has ordered the military to develop Space Force. I believe it's expected to be the biggest waste of money associated with space since Solo, a Star Wars story. Yeah, that did not do well. That did not do well. And you know what? It's had a lot of people going, oh, you should bring George Lucas back. You guys lost the plot. The first couple of Star Wars movies were okay, but things are going badly wrong. And, well, we really need the guy who started it all, the guy who knows what the hell he's talking about when it comes to Star Wars, to take the creative reins of Star Wars yet again. First and foremost, George Lucas isn't coming back. He took a massive check from Disney. He couldn't come back if he wanted to, I don't think. I mean, they might enlist him if things go badly wrong with the Star Wars franchise, but I think we're a long way off from that. I don't think they expected every single standalone movie to be a screaming home run. I know that they had high hopes for Solo because Han Solo is such a popular character, but you got to bear in mind, it's not necessarily Han Solo being a popular character. It's Harrison Ford, who people equate with Han Solo being a popular character. People like Harrison Ford. They don't necessarily like Han Solo. They think they like Han Solo, but what they really like is Harrison Ford, I think. Same reason people really like Indiana Jones. So yeah, you might not like where Disney is taking the Star Wars sequels, but trust me on this one, you, my friend, should be unbelievably happy that George Lucas had nothing to do with them. Because, well, did you see this? He recently revealed what he would have done. And if you're like me, you don't think it sounds good. And if you're like George Lucas, you don't think it sounds good. George Lucas said that people would hate it. There's this book. It's called James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction. And in James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction, which has sort of become a bit of a nerd Bible, George said, quote, the next 3 Star Wars films, we're going to get into a microbiotic world. Yeah. If you're already hearkening back to being confused in 9th grade science class, that's where you are like me. George Lucas said the next 3 Star Wars films were going to get into a microbiotic world. There's a world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the Whills. You following this? Oh, good, because neither was I. He said there's a world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the Whills, and the Whills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off of the Force. Are you thrilled to see this movie yet? No, didn't think so. He broke it down. He said individuals are vehicles for the Whills to travel around in, and the conduit is the midi chlorians. Now, if you're any kind of a Star Wars fan, you've heard the term midi chlorian over and over again. I think the time where we all sort of like really twigged on it was when Qui-Gon Jinn was testing Anakin Skywalker, soon to be Darth Vader's, blood sample, and found that the midi-chlorians were off the freaking chart. They'd never seen such a high concentration of it, meaning that he has this incredible ability to wield the Force like nobody else. The midi-chlorians are the ones that communicate with the Whills. The Whills, in a general sense, they are the Force. Now, if you're confused, that's where you and I are the same. So let's fully take in George Lucas's vision for what the Star Wars movies would have been. There's these creatures called the Whills. They're the ones who control the universe. They feed off the Force. Individuals are the vehicles for the Will to travel around in, and the conduit is the midi-chlorians. The midi-chlorians are the ones that communicate with the Whills. The Whills, in a general sense, they are the Force. Yeah. So his thing was going to be a microbiotic examination of what the Force actually was, and apparently it's little teeny Force bugs. Even though George said he would have done these movies, he admits, quote, a lot of the fans would have absolutely hated it. Just like they did Phantom Menace and everything. But at least the whole story from beginning to end would be told. So, yeah, I don't know. If you're like me, as much as you might miss George Lucas's input, and as much as you might want to live in the past and enjoy the greatness that was the first few Star Wars movies, when you find out that his continued vision for it is an awful lot like your 9th grade science class and involves microbiotic creatures that essentially are the Force and will tell the true story of the Force, when at no point in the discussion do lightsabers, Darth Vader, Han Solo, Princess Leia, X-Wings, Millennium Falcons, and blasters come into the situation, when we're talking about things that you look at under a microscope being the thrust of 3 Star Wars movies, well, all of a sudden you start to feel like this might have been okay. Hey, thank you so much for hanging. Thank you for being a part of my radio family. As always, this time that you and I spend together, it's the best part of my day every single day. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again. In the meantime, hit me up at ADSXE on Twitter and Instagram. Later.